Have you ever read a book where you just got the feeling that something was wrong? Sort of like if you didn't pay enough attention, the book could trip you up and in some way alter your perception of what is real. And most importantly, did you like that feeling? Yeah. Welcome to Paperback Journeys, where today we're going to be talking about my top 10 Mindf books. I'm not just going to be talking about books that have a twist or stories that are confusing just for the sake of it. I'm going to be talking about books that just left me, after I was done reading them, staring at the ceiling. And we're going to get started with this little beauty. Look at the size of that. Just a tiny little thing. It's A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L. Peck. So as I say, this is like a slim little novella. I read it in a single sitting, but it left a big impact on me. I still think about it quite often because it kind of changed the way that I think about physical space, but mostly time. In this book, the main character is a guy named Soren Johansson. And at the very beginning, he has passed away. And he's in the afterlife, but he just finds himself in this room. Throughout all of his life, he's been a devout Mormon. And so finding himself in this strange version of the afterlife is, as you can imagine, very unsettling for him. And here in this room, Soren is told that now you are in hell. But this is a version of hell which at first doesn't actually seem that bad because there's no demons, there's no torture chambers, there's no fire, no brimstone. In this version of hell, everyone is provided with a bedroom, whatever food they want to eat, whatever drink they want. And actually, on top of that, as a bonus, there is a way to escape this hell. All you need to do, quite simple, is find a book in this library that contains the story of your life. But this library is massive. Massive is an understatement. It's big. It's big. This library contains every single combination of letters that is possible in 410 pages. So, for example, to give you an idea, one book would just be the alphabet, typed out over and over and over again. Another one would be nothing but the word elephant, just over and over repeated. And one might contain Shakespeare's plays, perfectly written, except for there's one comma out of place. And you might pick up one book and it begins to tell the story of your life, but then halfway through, it just kind of like dissolves into gibberish. But somewhere in this library is the book that you are looking for. It does exist. And at the beginning of the book, you know, the people that find themselves in this strange hell, because there's a lot of them, there's a group of people, they decide, okay, what we'll do, we'll all work as a team and then we'll flip through all of the books, we'll help each other find our life stories, we'll get through it quicker. But then after the first day, when they haven't found anything, they start to think, maybe this is going to be a bit tougher than we thought. And then after the first week goes by, and then the first month goes by, and not one of them has found one single coherent sentence, the vastness of the task that's in front of them and the size of this library starts to dawn on them. And now you might think that, oh, the horror of this book is that it's an infinite library. In fact, it's the opposite. The horror of the book is that it isn't infinite. You are going to find this book one day, but the question is, when will it happen? And so that constant stress, that constantly knowing that the book exists, but you can't find it. Come on, man. You know what I'm saying? That's a unique kind of torture. The next book is Roadside Picnic by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. This book is set in the aftermath of an alien visitation to Earth. Years ago, aliens arrived and they stayed for a short while and then they just left without communicating with us at all. And after they left, The little spots where the spaceships landed are known as the zones. And these zones are filled with mysterious and hazardous artifacts, which human science and the level of technology that we are at now can't explain. We don't know exactly what they're for, but the alien technology is so far advanced that we just can't begin to understand it. It would be a little bit like a caveman finding an iPhone and kind of like, what do I do with this? I can't eat it. I can't burn it. Like, what's this for? That's kind of how we are with this alien technology that we've discovered. I really like this concept of this book because it's not really like any other First Contact books that I've read or First Contact movies that I've seen, where usually like humanity is kind of at the center of things. People are either trying to harvest us, or they're trying to enslave us, or they're trying to conquer us, or they're trying to bring us into some sort of intergalactic union. None of that is true in this book. The aliens kind of don't seem to be very bothered, and it paints humanity as insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe. And that by itself is quite a chilling idea, I think, especially if you're a little bit of an egomaniac like me. Do you know what I mean? I'm important. I have a YouTube channel. So in the wake of this visitation, the book is basically about humanity coming to terms with what all of this means. And there are these people who are called stalkers that venture into these zones and they retrieve these valuable alien objects and they sell them on the black market. You know, sometimes they'll sell them to collectors or sometimes they sell them to the government, but they're the only people that can kind of go in and navigate this strange terrain. Because the zones are so hazardous, they can really mess you up physically, definitely, but also psychologically as well. It's just a very dangerous area to move through. And the main character is this guy called Red Shoeheart, and he's one of these stalkers, and we just get to experience the world through his eyes. The writing in this book is really atmospheric. I loved it. Every time that Red went into one of these zones, it felt so disorienting to read, like stepping into a place that doesn't want you there and it is kind of like rejecting you. And this is like the kind of mind-bendy part, is that when you're going through it, there is something that is affecting your perception in a way that you can't explain because, again, the technology is so advanced. It's like a place that is beyond human logic, it's beyond our understanding. Our laws of physics don't apply in this place. And so Red has to navigate this terrain just purely on intuition. He can't use logic because, again, that's not going to work here. In this book, there's a lot of intentional ambiguity. And so if you're one of these readers who like things to be quite clear, you know, you like to understand what's happening, this book definitely won't be for you. This book is written in a way that is supposed to be confusing and unsettling for you. And speaking of unsettling and confusing, House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. So you've probably heard me bang on about this book before, and if not me, then someone else on BookTube. It's also very popular on TikTok as well. This is a book which maybe more than any other splits people's opinions. Some people think that it's really like eerie and heady to read. Some people think it's so gimmicky, but like, let me give you an example. I liked it, by the way. That's why I'm recommending it. But I understand why some people didn't like it. Look, you'll see in the inside, it's got chapters like this. I'm just going to flip through, but like sometimes, yeah, it's fine. But look, sometimes there's just a single word. That's not a spoiler, is it? No. And so, yeah, the layout and the typography is very unusual. Oh, yeah, here we go. Now we're cooking. I think when some people read it, they think that it's pretentious or they just think it's annoying. Like, I just want to sit down and read a book. You know, if that's the kind of vibe you're going for, again, this isn't going to be the book for you. At the very core of the book, it is a story about a family who move into a house that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, by like just a few inches. And as soon as the father of the house kind of discovers this, he becomes obsessed with it because it violates the laws of physics. And so therefore it can't be true. So he measures the outside of the house. He measures the inside of the house. He uses every method of measurement to see where the mistake is and where is the blind spot? What am I missing here? But no matter what he does, it doesn't matter if he uses tape or lasers or having professionals come in and measure the house, it always comes back the same. This house is larger on the inside than it is on the outside. That's just a fact. But that can't be a fact. It's not long before the house starts to change in other ways. Doors start to appear where there wasn't doors before. Corridors start to lengthen. I don't want to tell you any more than that because I don't want to spoil the story or the experience. And it's not just the typography that sets this book apart from other books that I've read. It's also the kind of layered storytelling. So it's tricky to explain, but the whole thing is a collection of stories that are stacked one on top of the other. First, you've kind of got like this home video that was made by the father of the house as he's like recording himself as he's measuring this house and exploring the mysteries inside of it. Then on top of that, you've got a documentary that was made that's featuring this footage. And then there is a book that is written about the documentary by a blind man who analyzes the movie, and that's called the Navidson Record. And then this manuscript is later found by this other guy called Johnny Truant, who is clearly losing his grip on reality when he discovers this manuscript. And the version that we are reading of The House of Leaves, right? So this thing is Johnny's edited version that's filled in the margins with his own little chaotic footnotes, little side stories about his life, breakdowns that he's having, just scribbled all over the place. And he talks about his strange relationship with his mother and all of his sexual conquests. He's losing it as he's reading what we're reading. So you end up reading 3 or 4 stories all at once. You're reading about the family's horror story. You're reading about this blind man's obsession. You're reading about Johnny Truant's descent into madness. It's unlike anything else that I've ever read. It's a great example of ergodic fiction where you're going to be flipping back and forth through the pages, trying to interpret what is really happening. There's a couple of scenes where I'm not trying to be like hyperbolic, right? But there was one scene in particular where it felt like there was something else in the room with me, you know? You're going to think I'm exaggerating when I say that. Mate, did I feel like that? Yeah, I did. I did feel like that. Be honest. Did you feel like that? Yes, you did. So just tell them. Yeah, I did. I actually took 3 days off of work to read this. Yeah, I'm a proper nerd. I take time off of work to read books, and I just dedicated all my time. I got a bunch of snacks. I just kept drinking tea, and I was just going through it, and I felt as though I was losing my mind. It was brilliant. I had a lot of fun doing it. The next book I actually don't have a physical copy of. I don't know where you can find a physical copy of this book, and it's called I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. So if I was to sum up this book in one word, that word would be brutal. It's a very short sci-fi horror that's set in this post-apocalyptic world where a supercomputer named Am has wiped out humanity, all except for 5 people. And these last 5 humans on Earth are kept alive so that Am can torture them forever. Like, not for the rest of their lives, forever. In this story, Am is godlike, and it can control the environment, it can warp time and space, it can reshape the humans' bodies however it wants to. It can do anything it wants, and the survivors just wander through endless landscapes that are designed by Am, and they're starving and they're mutilated and they're trapped in this nightmare that they know will never ever end. I think if you ever want to feel dread and hopelessness, pick up this book, man, because that's what you're going to get. There's a really fantastic piece of dialogue in this book. It's a pretty famous piece of dialogue, and it's, I suppose, about what motivates Am. Very creepy to read that part. I think reading this book is the closest that I've ever come to feeling as though I was having a nightmare while I was still awake. Next up is Ubik by Philip K. Dick. So this book starts off as a kind of sci-fi noir, and it's about a group of people with psychic abilities that work for a company that blocks telepathics from stealing company secrets, right? So in this world, you've got telepathics that steal secrets and telepathics that can block the stealing of secrets. So if you imagine these two things are kind of like hackers or a virus and a firewall, that's what they're kind of operating as. And so at the beginning of this book, this company of telepathics go to this job. It's this huge job. Something goes horribly wrong. There's an explosion. And then afterwards, reality starts to unravel. Time moves backwards. Objects decay into relics from the past. Like you could be holding a rifle and then suddenly the rifle turns into a musket, and then suddenly it turns into a bow and arrow, and then suddenly it turns into a spear, then a rock, you know? And so it's that kind of thing. And the characters just have no idea what is going on. They're as lost as I felt reading this. And I like that when the characters know as much as I do, and they're trying to discover it as I'm trying to flip through the pages and find out what's happening. And as they're trying to discover who it is that's messing with time, they themselves start to decay as well. And so it's like a literal race against time to figure out what's happening so that they can try and stop this time paradox. This book can definitely leave you feeling a little bit untethered, but that is sort of the point. You know, you're supposed to feel that way. Also, every chapter begins with an advertisement for a mysterious product called Ubik. So what is Ubik? Why is it relevant to this situation that's going on? It's all part of the mystery. The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins. So this story kicks off years after a group of children are taken from their homes and into his home by this strange man that they refer to as Father. And now that they're all adults, Father has gone missing and they're trying to find him. All of these characters have special abilities. They're kind of like, I think the way that I described them at the time is it feels like they're gothic superheroes. They've all dedicated their lives to a special area of study. So one of them studies languages, pretty normal, but then one of them studies communication with animals and so has become kind of animalistic himself. Another one studies war. And by the way, when I say they study, they dedicate every waking hour to this thing. So you can imagine the kind of person that would create if all you think about all day and all night is war, war, war. Another one studies death and the afterlife and how you can maybe transition between those two things. Yeah, they're supernatural. And now that they're adults, Father has gone missing. And so I don't know if this sounds familiar to you, but for me right away, it seemed like I was reading the novelization of The Umbrella Academy. I even went back to check to see if the show was based on this book, because the setup is near identical. And it turns out The Umbrella Academy actually came from a comic by Gerard Way, the guy from My Chemical Romance. That kind of blew my mind. I didn't even know that he wrote a comic. And this book does feel as though it could have been a graphic novel. It's very gory, over-the-top violence, full of these bizarre visuals that are like disgusting, definitely, but also weirdly beautiful as well, and kind of vibrant and colorful. I think the writing is very sharp. The tone is kind of like surreal as well. And yeah, it just, when you're reading it, it kind of feels a bit dreamlike. One of the more mysterious characters in the book is definitely Father. He's barely in the book, honestly, but he's more like a kind of ghost that, or like a shadow that's cast over the characters. They're always thinking about what Father would do. Can Father hear us now? Is he able to witness the things that we're doing? They're trying to find him, but also simultaneously they are terrified of him. Even the guy that studies war, like he's terrified of Father. And so yeah, he's a very curious character that's kind of like always in the background. On the back of the book, for example, he is described as a man who might be God. And, you know, for all I know, he might be. This is such a crazy book. But unlike some of these others that I'm talking about, where they just kind of feel eerie and unsettling, this has that for sure. But also, there's some pretty epic action scenes. So if you like a really fast-paced book, then maybe this will be the one to pick up. I know a lot of people in the comments section, when I reviewed it, loads of people were saying how much they liked it. They thought it was a hidden gem. So yeah, maybe give it a go. Next up is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the first book in the Southern Reach trilogy, and it's about an expedition into the unknown. And the story follows this small team of 4 female scientists, and each of them are identified in the book only by their specialist field. So you've got the biologist, the psychologist, the anthropologist, and the surveyor. No one really knows exactly what Area X is or where it came from, and so this expedition, they're sent in to try and get answers to this mystery and find out, you know, like, where's this come from? Is this caused by some other life form that we're not aware of? Is this a threat to us? You know, you need to go in there and get some answers. But they're not the first expedition that's gone in to retrieve data. Actually, 10 other expeditions have already gone in, and every time something has gone wrong. Either they've all gone insane, or they've, in some cases they've died. In other cases, they just went missing. And so every time they send in an expedition, something just happens. So yeah, this area is completely quarantined from the rest of the world. And once the team crosses through the border, they start encountering an alien wildlife that is shifting, and the landscape feels kind of dreamlike. I know I've used that word before. I'm going to try not to use it again when I talk about the other books, but it is very dreamlike. It's both beautiful, but also a bit scary as well. And the whole time, they're just trying to keep hold of their sanity as they explore this area and the mysteries that are contained within. They're trying to record the data because, again, these are scientists, right? So they're very analytical in their thinking, but it seems like Area X just has a way of kind of distracting you. Look over here, you know? Ignore your mission, forget why you're here, forget what you're doing, just look around. And so they kind of feel as though they're being a little bit hypnotized by some kind of force. And so that really is the job of the psychologist, is to keep them grounded. Look at me, right? Don't look around the eyes, look in the eyes. This book, admittedly, did remind me of Roadside Picnic a little bit. I've got to say, not everyone's going to agree with me, but I actually enjoyed this more than Roadside Picnic. If this book sounds familiar, there's also a movie adaptation by the same name starring Natalie Portman as well. But as is usually the case, I think that the book is way better than the movie. I think the movie's pretty good, to be honest, but the book is better. This is probably the most heartbreaking book on the list. It's The Fisherman by John Langan. So at the start of this book, we meet Abe, who is a widower that's just drowning in grief. And to cope with the loss of his wife, he takes up fishing, which is something, you know, it's very simple. It's a repetitive action where it can keep his mind busy and keep the darker thoughts at bay. And before long, he meets a character called Dan, who is a younger co-worker of his, who has also lost someone. And Dan's grief is raw and volatile. He's very angry and restless, and he wants to fight against the world. Abe is a little bit older, and his grief is more kind of insular rather than sort of lashing out at people. And so he sees the position that Dan's in, and he finds a kind of kinship with him. And so he takes him under his wing, and he invites him to go fishing. You know, he says, "Oh, the fishing has helped me a lot. Maybe it can help you as well. Like, we can keep each other company, and we can talk through things." And so, yeah, it's kind of like not, I wouldn't say a nice beginning. It's very dark and very somber, but you like Abe a lot in this book. I did anyway. But yeah, in the beginning, it's these two broken guys who are trying to find a fragile sort of peace through shared loss. That's the beginning. But then, as they travel around upstate New York, they're visiting all these lakes. And by the way, I need to say this, the description of the scenery in this book is very beautiful. John Langan kind of describes upstate New York in this way, where it's green, but it's overcast. The water is still. There's rustling in the leaves, you know, some small wildlife. There's mist curling over the surface of the lake. It's very cozy in a melancholic way. And eventually, as they're touring around all these different lakes in upstate New York, they hear about this place called Dutchman's Creek. And it's this hidden spot with a dark and mysterious past. And that's where the story starts to deepen a little bit, because in the middle of the novel, we find out about the history of Dutchman's Creek, and it's slowly revealed to us. And as I always say about this book, you might have heard me speak about this book before. I talk about it every so often. In the very middle of this book, there is a full-blown novella where we see all of the strange events that happened in the past in Dutchman's Creek. I think some readers find that quite jarring, since it breaks away for a long time from the main story. But I think it works really well. And as long as you know it's coming, it starts to feel as though you're peeling back layers of an old myth that is buried inside of this more modern story. This book is a cosmic horror, so it kind of brushes against ancient and unknowable forces beyond human comprehension, but it is also very deeply human as well. The horror exists alongside these themes of grief and friendship and acceptance. I love this book. I think that it is unsettling, but also full of heart as well. And I think that's quite rare sometimes to find a book that can do both. I've got a few more books to tell you about. And actually, the next book that I tell you about is one of my favorite books of all time. But just before I tell you about that one, I want to take a moment to thank all of the people who support this channel through the Patreon. I want to say thank you to the cult members. A big thank you to the named men, and an extra special thank you to the quartet. Thanks to all of you for supporting the channel. Like I always say, you know, you just give me so much motivation to keep putting out these videos, and knowing that people are out there supporting the channel, it makes a big difference. So thanks again. And if you like this channel and you'd like to support it and get some perks like the Metallic Paperback Journeys bookmark, access to some of the exclusive rooms on the Discord server, and also access to the PBJ Book Club, then you can click on the link in the description below. Okay, so let's talk about this book. You might have heard me mention this one before. I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. So I talk about this book more than maybe any other on the channel. It's again, it's one of my all-time favorites. I think it is a top 10 book for me. The only problem that I have is that it's got this stupid sticker on it, and I can't get it off because it's not actually a sticker, it's printed onto the cover. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that to me? I don't know why you do that. At first, this book is it seems like it's just about a bleak relationship drama about a woman and her boyfriend. Her boyfriend's called Jake, and they're driving through the snow to visit his parents at their remote farmhouse. And the entire way there, the girlfriend is kind of stuck in her own head, and she's turning over all of her doubts and wondering if she should break up with this guy, which is that's where the title comes from, right? I'm thinking of ending things. I'm sorry if the focus has been going in and out through this whole video, but it just seems like every time I look, I might be a little bit out of focus. Sorry about that if that is happening. Those car scenes really early on are so claustrophobic. Like I say, it's all snowing outside. There's a awkward, strained silence between the two of them. They're trying to find some kind of small talk, and it just felt painfully real. The conversations are written in such a natural way that rather than reading a book, it actually kind of felt a little bit like I was a fly on the wall, you know, and I was eavesdropping on a couple that seemed as though they were quietly falling apart, except for it also seemed like Jake maybe didn't realize that yet. Yeah, it's kind of straight. The opening is very, very good. When they finally reach the farmhouse, that's when things get even more strange. And I'm not going to spoil what happens. This is one of those stories where it's best to go in with little to no knowledge, but the atmosphere turns very unsettling very fast. Jake's parents are odd, and the house feels strange. I think to enjoy this one, you've just got to let go and enjoy the ride, see where it ends up. Unlike some of the books that I've told you about, this one has a resolution which is very satisfying, I think. So some of these, they're extremely ambiguous and they leave you wondering. I'm not going to say which ones or anything like that, but I'll just say this book does have a solid resolution, and I thought it was one of the best bits of the book. Maybe it was the best bit of the book. And also a little tip on top of this, if you don't want to read the physical book or the ebook or anything like that, this is one of those books where I think maybe the audiobook enhances the experience. I think you might want to choose the audiobook. I read it, and then someone said the audiobook was great, and immediately, like the next day, I got the audiobook and I just listened to the audiobook nonstop. And yeah, they were right. The audiobook was fantastic. This is another one of those books that's been adapted into a movie, and that's starring two fantastic actors, two of my favorite actors, Jesse Plemons and Jessie Buckley. They're both brilliant in it, but read the book. Like, you know, just read the book, man. It's better. It's better. There are some movies that are better than the book. I do believe that they exist. Maybe one day I'll make a list of times where the movie was better than the book, but more often than not, as is the case here, the book is better. Next is this really nice edition of There Is No Anti-Memetics Division. If you want this edition, guess what? You can't have it because it went out of print. I bought this for about, I think I bought it for under $10, man. And I think it's about $300 now. This is another one of those books that messes with your perception and your memory, and it makes reality kind of feel a little bit fuzzy. The main character is Marion Wheeler, who is a special agent working for the SCP Foundation, which is like this secret organization that studies and contains paranormal phenomena. And within the foundation, she's part of this branch called the Anti-Memetics Division. And this division is so classified that technically it doesn't exist because everything that they deal with is impossible to remember or to record. So if you imagine that, like, I'll give you an example. If you imagine that there's this creature that is stalking you, but the moment that you look away from it and you don't see it anymore, bang, like straight away, it doesn't exist anymore. You forget, you just forgot that it exists. And now you're just walking around and it's walking up behind you. That's the kind of thing that the Anti-Memetics Division is up against. These entities that can erase themselves from your mind entirely as a kind of way to like camouflage themselves. It's a really tricky concept to explain, which is part of what makes this book so fascinating. And I actually released a full review of this book very recently, like a couple of weeks ago, and I released it right around the time that the audiobook dropped in the US. So if you're curious whether or not this book would be for you, then you can check out my non-spoiler review by clicking up here. But otherwise, thanks so much for watching this video. I hope that you found a few good recommendations. Let me know in the comments section if you've read any books that really messed with your head and you feel as though should have been on this list. Let me know in the comments section. But yeah, have a good one and happy reading.